Thank you for listening to Blue Sky Horse Radio. I'm Yenny, and this is at CKMS 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo. Wow. So with us on the line is Kelly Tallon Franklin, and she is with an organization called Courage for Freedom, which is an organization that is created to end human trafficking of children. So thank you so much, and everyone, I suppose. But let's hear from Kelly. Thank you so much for coming on Blue Sky Horse Radio.
It's actually my pleasure to be with you today.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I was fortunate to see the email and I picked up on it, responded, and here we are. So would you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Kelly Tallon Franklin. I am known as Canada's leader in anti-human trafficking awareness certifications. And I am a survivor, although my experiences were when dinosaurs roamed the earth. My wheelhouse today and where I work today is with a national task force to end the buying and selling of girls and boys children in Canada. I also chair an ad hoc committee for a large women's organization nationally called Business and Professional Women Canada. And I'm the founder and chief executive director of a charity that does frontline work, helps support girls and their families. And I'm also an advocate and just passionate about eradicating the buying and selling of kids.
It's really difficult to talk about this. I mentioned that to you like when I first got a hold of you today. And you said your attitude is different about this and you're getting a lot of people behind you. And it's just incredible. But something that I saw in the email was regarding the unspeakable depths of depravity that are recording and share online of these children. So that's what you're standing up against.
Well, I can remember myself being a child and just wondering who was out there that was going to help me when nobody was noticing. And we were involved a couple of years ago, and because of a 16-year-old survivor who was cheeky, and I was working with our Horses That Heals program, to help her navigate her PTSD-induced trauma, she would chat back and forth with me, and we were traveling around the province, and we'd stopped in one of the gas stations, and it was an en route. And she saw a poster in the bathroom that was in black and white and gray. It had a girl in the poster that looked kind of grimy, and her clothes were dirty. The girl was positioned, down by the curb. And in the background, there was a male presence with his arms folded and you couldn't see his head. And so it was asking people in community to help find victims or call in. And she got really upset. And she said, "What the F is wrong with people? First of all, we don't live in black and white and gray. We live in a world that's got color in it. Secondly, I don't look like that girl in that picture. No wonder nobody ever saw me." And the third was, and if we are going to put posters out like this with headless men, we should just arrest all of them and there'd be no more human trafficking. So she taught me about victimization of victims. That when we make it look like a victim is acting in a certain way, so they almost deserve it, or we just feel pity for them because of that, and we don't understand that the person to blame are those that are selling or buying, then we are not having the good conversations. We're also scaring everybody. Somebody sees a poster like that, and it looks very doom and gloom and kind of National Enquirer version, tell the biggest, baddest, worst story ever to get the biggest audience following or clicks and likes. And we're never going to educate the community to not just know what the signs could look like, but what are the behaviors of a girl. And the majority of those trafficked in Canada are female. Although I believe the male stats are lower reported for reasons of shame and embarrassment. But I listened to her and I said, "So what do you need us to do?" And she said, "You need to get the message out." And At the same time, the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking was launching their hotline. And so we decided to put a 5 million impression media campaign across the province of Ontario, and we used government and civics and industry and organizational partners, and we just came together and started spreading information and said, not on our highways. And so we created quite a stir, and that was the start of the conversation. And I think for us, you alluded that we do it different. We can't do it the way it's always been done. We need new results, we need new ideas, new solutions to handle the age-old problem. And to the credit of those that went in front of us, all the pioneers, all those survivors that spoke up and stood before commissions and parliamentary meetings to make sure that there's laws of protection and prevention, we are so grateful for them. But it's going to take more of us working side by side, coast to coast to coast across Canada to drive in our lane and cover all the bases of this, whether they're legislative or legal or support or care or community education or messaging, whatever it is that we need to do together. There needs to be enough room at the table, regardless of what sector people are coming from, or if they're just entering or if they've been doing this for a long time. We need to do the heavy lifting together, and we need to lift each other up. And the first thing we need to do is listen to survivors, because they are the ones that can inform us about what's happening currently, what the trends are, what's working, what's not working, what's needed, what we think is needed and isn't needed. We don't need to waste money, time, and energy on this. So we take a look at what's happening. We know different provinces have different legislation. Some of it works well, some of it doesn't. We know federally, we're working right now through the All Political Party in Ottawa to try to do some things about minor age use of pornographic sites and the things that we're seeing about Pornhub and a Canadian business being able to upload violent rape videos that can include children. And now there's a civil suit. And this wouldn't have happened before, that this many organizations, this many people would intersect and demand that this issue has a spotlight shone on it, and that governmental will would be to be proactive. So we just are not going to be quiet. And so we started Project Maple Leaf to say, if we could just think of one thing that would polarize Canadians, that they could say, we can agree on this, it would be, I want to end the buying and selling of girls and boys, children in Canada.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at today.
That's incredible. No, that's really good. And you mentioned some companies there, and the fact that Canada has, you mentioned as well, inflicting rape videos onto the world. So, like, how is this permissible? Like, how is it actually that this is taking place?
Well, you'd have to ask the parliamentarians where our fail is in our legislature to protect children. And what's happening, they're on it, they're working on it. But what we do know is the legislative process is about as slow as I am getting up in the morning. So we know that sometimes the things we're working on today are going to take a while. But I sense that both our government and the public, they're not willing to wait anymore.
Yeah.
And so we are really, really excited to see everyone working together in a different way. And I'm not talking about adults. I'm not talking about legitimacy of women's decisions and rights. I'm talking about children. So if we just want to get back to the Canadian focus, that this is not what we want to be known for. And this is not my Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start asking ourselves, why is it happening? How is it happening? where is it happening, and what can our response be to take action? Because everybody would like to fight this, but unless we give them some tools, so we start by giving them a sign and tell them, spread the message. Start making people aware in your communities. If you get a sign for Project Maple Leaf that says, I want to join the Eradicate Challenge to end the buying and selling, and you share it with people like an ice bucket challenge without getting it dumped over your head. It's kind of COVID friendly because you can pass the signs and print them virtually. And then February 22nd, which is Ontario Day, National Awareness Day, and it's also Alberta's Day awareness. We're hoping for a federal day at some point, hint, hint, government, if you're listening. But we want to mark that day as a day when we're going to stop and take a couple minutes, and we're going to hold the sign and soak our virtual media platforms with this. We're going to add our voice. You can create your own sign, but use the hashtags. Project Maple Leaf, Eradicate Challenge, Courage for Freedom. And we want to send a message to our communities. You see, one of the problems is that those that are acting as criminals in this area, they have a lot of freedom. They move between the provinces, they move between communities, and it is a Canadian problem. 98% of all those trafficked in Canada are Canadian. So we really want intelligent conversations. We want to demystify this, make it simple, let everybody jump on with a polarizing thought, and then we can start to move and do even more work and write resolutions and work collaboratively with agencies and governments and survivors. And there's lots of space at this table.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So what is the bill, or Bill S-203?
So are you talking about the bill that's currently in the Senate?
Yeah.
So that was proposed by Julie Mivelle-Duchamp, I believe, if we're referring to the same bill. And she is an independent senator out of Quebec who sits on the all-political parliamentary group that is fighting human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and labor trafficking. And it was introduced because we are not protecting young people from being able to enter into pornographic sites. So their access, the verification access, is a joke. Nobody has to prove that they're of age to enter. And so kids are inadvertently bumping up into hardcore porn. And then that's their first experience with sex. That's where they're getting their sexual education. And they're sharing it. There's things happening. And it's just changing the dynamic of how young people are thinking about sexual relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So protecting children from that, it's our civic duty. We commit as part of the UN with CEDAW that child rights are part of what we subscribe to as, a member of the UN. We're failing our kids if we're not protecting them from pornographic images that are not age appropriate, that they're, I believe none of them are age appropriate, but that's my feeling. But I'm saying it's about children. Mm-hmm. So a child's right is to be protected, and it's justice for them. We're failing them. So that's what this bill is addressing. And it's also addressing young people being, if anybody's uploading and there's a minor in a video, in content, that we have to hold those people accountable at the highest level. So that's what we're seeing. We're really thankful the government's working on this.
Yeah.
But it's only it's like one hair on the whole dog. There's a lot more to do.
Mm-hmm. And you have a sign behind you as well with hashtag Project OnRoute. What is that about?
Yeah. Well, so Project OnRoute was the start from a response to a 16-year-old who, as I said earlier, told us we weren't doing it very well. And we weren't finding very many young people. and we weren't listening to survivors. And so that's what we're doing. Now we have Project Maple Leaf. This is our national project.
Nice.
And the back of the sign actually has instructions on how to take the Eradicate Challenge.
Okay.
Over the holidays, there were over 500 of these sent to our members of parliament in Ottawa. We are asking them to participate so every one of their constituents can know what's happening February 22nd. Ontario parliamentarians are getting this next. We love that the Ontario government has done incredible work in this area. They, I believe, are leading the fight against human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Their strong strategy out of Ontario, I believe, is leading the nation. So we are going to call on them, Premier Doug Ford and Jill Dunlop, and Sylvia Jones, and anybody else is a parliamentarian that'll add their voice and get some governmental will and let them challenge some of their friends in Ottawa. They can hold the sign. They can share the message. They can let their constituents know what's happening. And when that happens, they'll also be inclined to look at their legislative suggestions and their policies and what they're doing in committees. It just keeps going. If we put the pressure and we're positive, the government can't do this by themselves. The public can't do this by themselves. Industries can't do it by themselves. But if we all work collectively, we cast a bigger net of prevention and safety for our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that sign's so important. It seems like just a little plastic sign. But when you understand that it can change the focus of a nation, it's important for people to hold it.
Where can people find that online?
So if they send an email to office@courageforfreedom.org, we can send you a sign, or we can send you something to print yourself. And while you're there, we can point you towards the webpage, and you can sign up to get updates about what's happening. Once we start February 22nd, we'll be going just to build a movement on social media and through conversations to see how many people will agree that this is a statement they want to make as a Canadian. And once we get to July 30th, we will be figuring out where to have a big party to celebrate. Because
Nice.
we need to celebrate when people come together to do something, and then let the public know what next steps are. How to take training, how to become an ambassador, where to get involved in your community, how to help your government do some work, how to get involved in local agencies wherever you are, because it's top down, bottom up, and everything in the middle if we're going to solve this. So July 30th is the United Nations Day to End Trafficking in Persons. So it just stands to reason that we're all going to get together that day. And we haven't decided where. When we started Project Maple Leaf, we were supposed to be on screens in 4,600 Tim Hortons across Canada. But with what's happened, the advertising firm for that pulled the plug, and there's nothing happening on screens in Tim's with communities. We're actually glad we don't have a big bill to pay for that with nobody watching. And we figured the public is now spending lots of time looking at each other and looking at social media. So why don't we just talk that way?
Mm-hmm.
Save the money to help survivors. And why don't we decide where the party's going to be when we take a look at what COVID's doing?
Yeah.
So we're ready to pivot. But I'm thinking July 30th, we might be at all the parliaments. So our national task force is saying, okay, we'll be in Alberta, we'll be in Manitoba, but we'll also be in Ottawa, and then people can go for one day and celebrate that we're going to work together as Canadians to eradicate this. And have a big party on the front lawn of Parliament if COVID has lifted. That's what we're going to do. Province to province to province, territory to territory. Our national task force has celebrated professionals from all sectors engaged with us as leaders. Coast to coast, our Indigenous lead that is responsible for intersection engagement with all those Indigenous organizations, First Persons, the reserves, the Indigenous constables, Indigenous chiefs and elders. She's actually in Northwest Territories. So actually being stuck on Zoom calls has actually helped us to do a better job of being national on this task force. My communications lead is out of British Columbia. I have persons across Ontario and everywhere in between and out to the east. And we are just going to keep going and growing. And we have industry sector people. So we have somebody on the National Task Force. It's making sure we're talking to victim survivors and their organizations and asking them, what do they want us to message? We're also talking to public health and safety, education, nurses, health associations, women's organizations, men allies, transportation industries, hotel, motel, and entertainment. There is going to be no stone unturned in Canada. We're just going to keep building.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're having fun doing it. Like, this is you said it, it's a really hard issue.
Yeah.
But for me, I have been around the block a little bit, and I take care of myself with the horses.
Mm-hmm.
So I manage what I need to work with a national task force, because what we need to understand is when we're working with survivors, very often they're triggered or the trauma's reintroduced, and that's the same for me. So every single person on this task force has to take care of themselves and take care of each other and work together. And we get to celebrate a lot of amazing things.
That's good. I'm looking forward to the end of July and this summer to hear how the progress has been and to follow it.
Yeah, well, you can help push the messaging out.
Yes, I will.
We need you. We need those that are listening to radio alternatives and podcast alternatives that aren't on mainstream, because we don't want to miss reaching somebody. If you're a young person and you're listening to this and you want to get involved, oh my goodness, I've got stuff for you to do. So anything from helping with social media to mail-outs and office work to helping us find influencers and messaging to doing some creative things. We're creating opportunities with the arts and music and fashion industry. We have a lead on our national team that's their intersection point with communities across Canada.
I guess this really touches everyone, actually. Like, it's something that anybody will respond to. The topic is something that can really happen to anybody, and we all need to be on board.
Well, the thing is, there are children, and it's our responsibility. When I speak, I hear, well, those kids. There are kids. I was one of those kids once upon a time. And if somebody would have been paying a little more attention and had a little more education, I might not have gone through some of the things I did. And I definitely know girls that I work with currently wouldn't. Because all it takes is helping to educate everybody to understand it's not what we think it is, it's not where we think it is, and it's not who we think it is. It could be somebody in our own neighborhood that starts out by buying pornographic images of children in your own community that lives one door away. And that can lead to them actually having contact with somebody and ending up purchasing a minor. It's hard to fathom. But I can tell you that it is happening, and it's increasing. And isolation because of COVID is increasing young girls doing camera work to get paid. And there's certain risks that are inherent with that. Not everybody's honest. We're talking about criminals. People that could make up to $250,000, $350,000 a year tax-free off of a girl. And they can sell her over and over and over. They can sell drugs once, they can sell a girl as long as they don't wear her out. And then when they do, they throw her away and they get another one. And it's not too difficult to do it. They're just looking for vulnerabilities in a young person that wants love and attention. And then they use every psychological means to entrap and exploit that person while they groom and lure. And they'll take up to 2 years. They'll be patient. They'll be patient and they actually exploit. And it's just egregious. And the other thing is, this crime also hurts other people in community. It hurts the families. It hurts the wife of a buyer who gets arrested for purchasing a minor for sex. We actually say to rape them. It affects a whole bunch of people. So a lot of stigma around this prevents people from having intelligent conversations. We'd rather talk about something south of the border that rich people are involved with, or shipping containers, or something else, but we're not willing to address that it's happening in our community and have the conversation about who's actually buying these girls and how do we help them to stop. Not shame them, because if we do, they go farther underground. But how do we start having conversations about what is it going to take to understand what you're doing to that young person and being able to address your addiction towards them, deal with it and get help. And how are we going to help men allies hold each other accountable? So that's why I say we do a little different. We have our conversations are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard work.
Yeah, but it's good. When you see results, when you see 5, 6, 7 years later, a girl who just has got back the capacity to self-direct her own life, she'll be dealing with her trauma forever. But all we need to do is give her an opportunity at some tools and see how we can just move it along by helping her make decisions to move her own life along.
Mm-hmm.
And then not abandoning her.
And you use horses, which I thought was really interesting, because my show has always been around advocacy for horses and mental health and horses. And
wow. Well, one of the most important things that I learned with my own life, that horses help me heal. And that started in my life when I was about 8 and carried through. And I never thought I'd be doing this with horses. But I actually trained and was certified in equine-assisted therapy and equine-assisted learning. And then the horses helped me develop some things. I met a really interesting man in Calgary named Jim Marland who, works with wounded warriors, and he's chief psychiatrist at the Calgary Hospital, and found out we use the same kind of horses. And when I found out that there was a detox process for his vets, the veterans that had the PTSD, and it was within that first 72-hour window, we came to see the value of offering that to victim survivors. It's that first 72 hours that they're gobsmacked and their brains are just fried. And the neurotransmitters are just dull or non-existent or misfiring. And so the research that's been done, and Dr. Jackie Linder did some research out in BC on this, that the brain activity of a survivor is equated to somebody who's done 2 tours in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Or somebody whose brain activity is presenting like a prisoner of war. Okay, you need to think about that. These are children.
Yeah.
The average age of entry in human trafficking is 13. That's average.
Oh my God.
So when you think of trying to work with a 13-year-old, first of all, working with teenagers is trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. or herd kittens. So when you add the horses, there is opportunity for the horses to do their work because they are the best animal when it comes to PTSD intersection. Dogs are great, but horses are flight animals. And so their mentality isn't aggression, and it isn't pack mentality. It is herd mentality. And herd mentality is made up of protection and safety. And we've just seen it time and again that horses do their thing. And they metaphorically speak to girls in ways that I never could, or a face-to-face over the desk counselor could.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the girls don't like horses, something magical happens. And maybe they don't end up with horses ongoing for their therapy, but it builds a bridge and it snaps the brain back into a place where they are safe, just for a moment. And if you can base all the work that you do afterwards on that moment and build and let her build and the horse build, then it increases our chance for success, for her to take control of her life back, step by step, very imperfectly. It's very messy work, and just see where she wants to go.
That's really incredible. Yeah, that's really good work. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Kelly. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Well, thank you for your sincere interest. I know many email conversations back and forth between us. We've been sharing lots, but somebody who has a heart for mental health and horses was the perfect person to do this interview with me. So I just want to send lots of love and appreciation back your way.
Thank you, Kelly. And could you repeat again where people can find you guys online?
If you can go to Courage for Freedom, and it's spelled out. It's not the word for like the number. It's COURAGE, and then the word for, FOR, and then freedom.org is our webpage. And it will take you, and it will give you email addresses and everything else that you need to intersect with us. If you want to get me directly, it's Kelly, Kelly, at courageforfreedom.org. And I might be a little slow because I'm in the barn, but I will email you back.
Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Thank you. And for those that are listening as well, they need to look up the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking hotline. Put it in your phone. And if you think somebody is at risk, make the call. If you're wrong, who cares? Their staff are paid to answer the phone anyways. But if you're right, you might save somebody's life.
That's really important. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was Kelly Tallon Franklin on Blue Sky Horse Radio. This is at CKMS 102.7 FM Radio Waterloo. Take the Eradicate Challenge by adding your hashtag Eradicate Challenge, also hashtag Project Maple Leaf Movement, and also the website for Courage for Freedom is courageforfreedom.org. Thank you so much for listening today.